It is Thursday, August 7th, and you've reached Irish Illustrated Insider. I'm Tim O'Malley, joined today by Tim Priester of Irish Illustrated, Pete Sampson of The Athletic, and John Bryce of Football Scoop. And we've seen more than half of what we're going to see this August, actually, as Notre Dame will begin to batten down the hatches in preparation for Miami. We'll get to some injury news and quarterback updates in a few minutes. But, guys, had Al Washington and Joe Rudolph, two of the more informative coaches, I think, to talk to. I'm pretty sure you made a point on our instant analysis. We're getting ready to review our 20 minutes of practice, and you're like, let's just review this interviews because it was a little bit more revealing and enlightening. And just kind of start with you. You spent some time with both, actually, but maybe Joe Rudolph, and he always does a great job when he's out there.
Yeah, he really does. I don't think we mentioned this in instant analysis yesterday, but the question was brought up about Will Black, and he basically who's been playing some guard, and essentially said that there might be a need there, and we know he can play tackle, even though he hasn't played at this level. So they were giving him a look there. But we mentioned this in instant analysis about Rudolph talking about he starts the year with uh, commentary and film of Joe Moore and how he taught offensive line play, Harry Heastan. Can't think of two better guys to, um, you know, pattern your offensive line play around. And so, that's kind of cool because everybody knows who Joe Moore is now because the award's named after him. And that's really become one of the more renowned, one of the more, well-known awards and, addition
I
to
think because
Heisman,
the
a couple
linemen vote on it,
others.
right? Don't you think, Tim? Because the linemen
Is
vote on
that,
it themselves, like real
yeah,
people. Yeah.
yeah. And, it's just Aaron Taylor's done a good job when it first came out of promoting it. And I think they've done a good job with that. But yeah, Joe Rudolph is always interesting. And Pete, you asked Al Washington about 22 defensive linemen, and he said that's our edge, and it was an edge as they went through 16 games last year. It needed to be in order for that to happen. So, yeah, I mean, to me, I don't want to say this yet because it's part of a question. But there's one area there. I think Sullivan Absher will he be Charles Jagusah? Probably not, but that's a pretty good replacement. The question then is backups, and chances are there are years where an entire offensive line goes through the season intact, but I think it's pretty rare, especially if you go through a 16 game season.
I was going to say Joe Rudolph, his technical title is the Joe Moore offensive line coach at Notre
There you
Dame. So
go.
you really should start with Joe Moore video. Probably contractually obligated to do so. But yeah, the number of defensive linemen, I mean, I think it impacts obviously your starters, how much you have to play them, how much you can rotate your backups, like what your scout team looks like, because you're going to probably have a better quality of scout team defensive linemen, just kind of how you go about your practice business. Ideally, you probably are not playing as many guys as much as they did last year. I mean, I think Al Washington even referenced like I'm sort of numb to injuries at this point because of how many guys he had to shuffle in and out. So I I'm interested to sort of see like how quickly Traore is back up to speed, because that is, of the guys that you just look at running around on the practice field. I mean, he looks like $1 million. I mean, Bryce Young also looks really good. Maybe Traore is the number five, still makes him look even better than he actually is, and he's quite good. But I just like the field end, defensive end is interesting to me because, Al Washington talked about you can put your two best out there. You don't have to worry about like
Yeah.
specializing one side of the field. So I'm immediately thinking like, well, then you can put Bryce Young and Boubacar Traore out there at the same time. And that is something that I would really, really like to see. Unless we get to a point where Young bounces inside, and then Botello's healthy, and then you have Botello, Traore, and Young out there at the same time. I would also really like to see that.
Yeah, and certainly Notre Dame's not doing anything to dissuade the fact that Traore looks good because he's been featured on their socials some and featured rushing around the end in one of the images maybe I saw last night. So he has looked good. He's still wearing that sleeve on the left leg. We'll see if that's an all-season thing or if that's just while he continues to test it day after day on the practice field. Logan Thomas is a little heavier. He looks good. And then, yeah, there's just a lot of different parts in there, and you need that across a 16 game season, but you need that when your toughest two games are your first two games as well.
Yeah, I'm really intrigued to see how that they handle this because I brought it up, Tim. I think we brought it up on Instant. I've
We
written
did.
about it before. If you look at A&M last year, and then funny enough, Northern Illinois, that wasn't the plan, but this is how it happened. They played their fewest number of defensive players. I have a feeling they meant to play more against Northern Illinois, but it didn't work out that well for them. But then they start playing more. I it's just tough because you're going to play in the heat of Miami and the intense heat of Texas A&M at Notre Dame. That's always a super hot day, in South Bend still. That's when you think, well, we got to rotate more guys, but you got to trust enough guys to rotate more guys. And I wonder where they get to on that. And I still think, I don't care, just from past players coming back, I just don't think Boubacar Traore's 50 snaps game one. I don't find
That's
that
fair.
conducive to a guy that's coming off of ACL 11 months out. Um, so the rotation has to be there, and that's why having guys come out and talk like Donovan Hinish Jr., Tui Halamaka, and Josh Burnham, especially those two ends. Those are the guys that came out and talked. They were the representatives, and it took this long for us to mention them. That's how good their depth is right now on the defensive line.
Yeah, I mean, Tim, yeah, I know what you're saying about you don't just keep running guys in and out, but Traore has experience. Thomas has a little bit of experience. Patella when he comes back, Burnham, Tui Alamaka, Bryce Young. I mean, these are all defensive ends that played significant snaps and or significant plays last year in the run of the national championship game. So, I think that you just don't run them out there for the sake of keeping guys fresh for the whole game. But you do have some people, at least a defensive end, that have played some really important downs for Notre Dame.
And one quick thing I would note also, like with Traore, you definitely want to be able to use him and get some snaps with him at Miami, but he's probably a little bit more important against Texas A&M because Marcel Reed is much more active and mobile quarterback than is Carson Beck.
Yeah, and that's like just hitting 50 snaps for anybody, even 100% healthy was rare last year for Notre Dame's defensive line.
Cross and Mills would be the types, right? When they were
Yeah,
all
but I mean A&M, how many defensive linemen played 50 snaps?
wasn't it Cross and Mills? Did they get Cross in there?
No,
That
It
Cross
wasn't
was coming off the
Cross.
injury. Cross was injured.
Cross played 50.
Yeah,
That was the most. Botello played 49. The next highest was 41. I think it was Mills. So yeah, I think that's how it's probably going to look at Miami. No, nobody's going to go over 50, but you'll have 8 guys who all played 20 minimum.
I'd
So
love for them to have at least 8 guys that play 20, 25
yeah,
snaps across
I
the
think
line,
it's
obviously across the
highly,
line.
highly likely.
Yeah, I just think you need it too. I mean, and Bryce, you make a good point about needing Traore, but I don't mind a good pass rusher when there's more of a sitting duck in the
Right, right.
pocket too.
Yeah.
No, I'm
But no, he's
saying,
also able to process quicker about where to
yeah,
bring
I'm
the
saying
ball
you
and
can
stuff like
probably
that.
be a little more selective with him at Miami
Yeah,
versus any given down Marcel Reed could tuck and run
yeah,
against
yeah.
Texas A&M.
Before we get to the quarterbacks, we have not injury official reports, but some unfortunate injury news. I'll turn over to you here, JB. And we had a post on our board from Wall Street Mike on Kedron Young. All we know is kind of bad news for both Kedron Young and then the gut punch of this one, not that it's not for Kedron and his fans, but is Kevin Bauman.
Yeah, I would say all the indications are not of the positive variety. All the indications are not, especially as it pertains to Kedron Young, that he would be back in 4 weeks or anything like that. I was told by a couple of different people, he had an MRI Wednesday night. Anytime you hear MRI with a running back or pretty much anybody on the football team during practice, that's not a good thing. I think Kevin Ballman also had an examination of his knee. That guy's been through a lot, and you just wonder how much he can take and how much he'll keep trying to come back. So just, yeah, I'm trying to be deferential to the players here, particularly Kevin Bauman, who's had just a, you know,
Litany. Jeez.
yeah, just an unbelievably cruel path through college. And flashed, and we all talked about it that he flashed even this camp. You noted he had a great catch, and his body looked good. He had just got through telling us he felt better than he had before his first injury. But it does not sound like good news whatsoever for either of those guys, and does sound like leg, knee type injuries.
It took the talk about Gabe Rubio away from yesterday, not being out there. I love the comment that You mean he missed a practice with a bruise? There are bruises and there are bruises. Like Al Washington said, it wasn't anything significant. He didn't talk about it specifically, but they're debilitating. I mean, Phil Carter, Tim, you remember when Phil Carter got hurt?
Phil
A little
Carter was
bit
the only
before
player I
your
knew, and
time.
he was the only person I knew in the world other than Herschel Walker back then. Those are the two people I knew in the world:
I
Phil
mean,
Carter and Herschel
he
Walker.
missed
Yes.
like he, he missed like half a season with a quad bruise.
I think I would
I
have
mean,
argued
it
with you
could,
that Phil Carter was better than Herschel Walker back then too, because I didn't know any better. But there was
that's because you were
Phil Carter's the
five.
best. He's the best. Yeah. It's bad. It is bad news for. I mean, Keedron Young, like Pete was pointing out. I think you started separately researching this was the what the number 3 and 4 running backs would get at Penn State, and we disagree on number 3 at Notre Dame. I think he's going to get a lot more than the number 3 Penn State running back got, Aeneas Williams. But I kind of with you
Oh
on the
yeah.
number 4 running back would not get that many reps under Sider. And we mean game relevant reps. Obviously, if Notre Dame can pull ahead of Purdue, you turn over the last quarter to the number 4 running back and stuff like that. But and playing teams where they're up by 30 points. But Pete, do you have those numbers or
Yeah, no, it's because somebody asked me my mailbag just like who's going to be RB3 and how much work are they going to get? And I was like, well, usually we go back and look at Notre Dame stats to figure that out, but Penn State stats are a lot more relevant because Sider was there, and also they have the Singleton Allen combo, which is a lot like the Love Price combo here.
yeah.
The last 3 years at Penn State, their number 3 and number 4 backs averaged 20 carries for the season. 20 carries each, so 40 carries total.
That's
That's
insanely low because I've
that
done
is
studies
nothing.
on the 3 and 4 at ND and they
Yeah,
are
and they
way up
didn't,
there.
it's like and I think Sider's influence on Notre Dame's offense is going to be a lot less job share than what Dylan McCullough did. I think that's how Mike Denbrock also likes it. So, I mean, more of the Sider approach. So, I think Aeneas Williams is really talented and will force his way onto the field. Um, Keedron Young, even if he was healthy, I'm not sure there's this huge role for
Yeah.
him when the game is on the line. So, I mean, look, it sucks for Keedron Young, but I think we are talking about somebody who maybe he was going to get 30 carries this year. It's not. I have a hard time seeing him taking carries away from Love, Price, or Aeneas Williams.
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
Kedron had
and without
definitely.
knowing,
Go ahead,
go ahead,
JB.
John.
I was just going to say, I think Keedron Young had definitely, well, he told us he felt he had really improved his pass pro. And from talking with people since the onset of camp, they felt like he was starting to potentially emerge as the big back guy, the guy that they could count on in some of those situations where you need a little bit heftier frame. And as you noted, T.O., he was 240, but said he felt great at 240. So I do think that because Love and Price are so sensational and so dynamic in their own respective ways, that would have given Keedron Young a chance to be that much more effective because he is the absolute hammer. As it was put to me, he's maybe a slightly more talented top end Audric Estime. So, and that was somebody on campus who said that to me. So, certainly in this backfield, is crowded and it was going to be tough to have a huge role, but I do think he could have filled a role for this team, especially when you look at the expectation that this will be another 13, 14, 15 type 15 game type season.
I think we need to know how good Corey Smith is. That was the number 3 back at Penn State. But Pete, to your point, I mean, if it's been that way for 3 years, it was more than Corey Smith. But
Yeah.
look, Aeneas Williams is a pretty highly rated running back and deserves to be on the field. But ultimately, generally speaking, the running backs coach makes that decision. So it'll be interesting. But I agree that, healthy or not, and then, we haven't, and then there's Jabron Payne in the equation too. 4 deep at running back is just not realistic. If 1 and 2 are just average backs, well, then you can use 3 and 4 without thinking much about it.
I was just gonna
But
say
1 and 2 are not average backs in Notre Dame right
in
now.
2019, this is a great example of the words you just said. As I was looking at it, I was like, wow, 42 carries, 48 carries, 46 carries. You know why? Because those guys were Jameer Smith and Sebo Flemister and Jafar Armstrong, and their lead running back was Tony Jones Jr. If their lead running back was Kyron Williams, it would have been 20 and 14
Yeah.
and 13, and
Yeah.
Kyron would have had 200 as opposed to Tony Jones. So that's definitely part of it. I will point out to Pete's point, like there's a reason Devin Ford left that running backs coach's room. He wasn't going to get any carries. I mean,
Yep.
he came to Notre Dame for that. But hey, Jabron Payne, when Jabron Payne is the guy who like, I could not believe he stayed to play for Notre Dame. And his role was short yardage and his other role was third down
Well,
pass protection. So he can do things that
yeah.
you need him to do.
Did we talk about this? He's supposed to graduate at the end of this
We
semester. I
did. I
realize
can't
it's only
remember where. I
step
think it was the
jump,
last podcast. Yeah. He can,
I think upon the completion of the season, we'll see that
but he's
that
already
happen.
redshirted. So it's not a, I need to redshirt Jaden Mickey, other guys type thing.
Right,
That's the
right,
good news there because
right,
that comes
right.
up. Well, we buried the lead, guys, but we don't have 100% updates on the quarterbacks, Kenny Minchey and CJ Carr. But I think separately, we have heard that this is more than truly a race. Like we say, is it going to be? If you asked me in July, how good of a competition is it going to be? I'd have said it'd be over by now because I think that's what Notre Dame's coaches expected it to be, and it's definitely not.
So what we hear, that Mitchie's certainly right there. At the very least, Mitchie's certainly right there in the competition. So when you start hearing that more than once, um, you start to think, okay, well, why is that the case? Well, he's been in the program a year longer. We know what Kenny Minchie's personality is like, and it's pretty unruffled most of the time. I don't know. You start adding the running component, you start adding things up like that and say, okay, well, it starts to make sense. I'll believe it when I see it. But,
I yeah, I
Kenny,
actually go ahead, Tim.
well, I mean, Kenny Minchie is pretty unflappable and has this non-braggadocious confidence in himself. And so if that is actually what is happening, I guess when you start to look at it from a different perspective, because we keep saying highest ceiling, CJ Carr. Well, who's running the offense the best? Who's protecting the football the best? I still have questions about that with Kenny Minchie, and then CJ Carr had a bad first day when we happened to be out there. I don't know. I mean, I guess when I start thinking of it that way, I'm not shocked, but yet I think most of us would say, yeah, CJ Carr is going to win the job. Kirk Herbstreit's talking about how great he thinks CJ Carr is going to be. And, the narrative just kind of carries over from person to person. But we were surprised by Kenny Minchie in the spring at how close he made it. Maybe we shouldn't be surprised now if he's at least making it close, if not more.
I mean, I think I was trying to think about if Kenny Minchie wins the job, where that would rank on like surprises in 25 years covering Notre Dame.
Not starting now, though, right? You're saying starting on July 31st.
Oh, well,
You're
yeah,
not
August.
shocked now. You're
Yeah,
not shocked
August
now.
31st. Yes.
No, no,
Uh,
I'm saying like your opinion of the possibility of that happening has changed since July
oh,
31st.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I'm just saying like almost from the count from January 1,
Right. Okay.
if you
Yeah.
said Kenny Minchie starts at Miami, I'd be like, "What?" But that, I mean, it would be
Well,
really high on the list of surprises.
Oh, okay.
we would think Carr still had a elbow injury if we heard
Right,
that on
yeah.
January 1st.
So that I wonder if I mean everything that I've heard is like internally it's on. Like it's described in the Goog as 50-50, which I'm like, oh my God, I'm still surprised by that, even after watching day one and a little bit of practice. But maybe Minchie's just coming to get Carr. Maybe Carr hasn't kicked on. I mean, I
I
would say one thing about Carr, like
read the latter. Yeah.
we think about when we've seen Carr in an open practice before this last week. He was the best quarterback by far in three of them, and he was probably the best quarterback in the fourth. That's spring game, Jersey scrimmage, Jersey scrimmage. I mean, clearly was not last week. So maybe he's just, I don't know, maybe he's scuffling a little bit, and Kenny Minchie's taking advantage. If you're going to base the entire quarterback competition off what they're doing in August of 2025, which is how you should be doing it, maybe Minchie's just been better the last week. That when you like make it more micro, then maybe it's less surprising. It's just like we've sort of been told and we've seen from Carr some really unique special stuff. But maybe that just hasn't kicked on in training camp.
I would say what's the single word that we've maybe heard the most when we've asked whomever from Marcus on down to assess how they will gauge this quarterback battle or competition race, whatever you want to call it. Trust. To me, trust is it. And we know there have been some turnovers that have lingered, and there's good and bad in that because I was told this week that even though they're just a week into camp or 8 days now officially, I think Tay Johnson has 4 interceptions already. He did not stop with 2 interceptions on day one. He has added interceptions since that time. So there have been some more turnovers. There's also been some tremendous highlight plays. I believe it was a CJ Carr pass to Malachi Fields in the stadium Sunday night that really left people saying, yes, we were absolutely right about Malachi Fields. Yes, this guy is going to be a major impact player on our team. And yes, this guy is going to be a difference maker. So I think it's consistency. We've heard the trust thing, and we all have seen CJ Carr, even in the very limited viewings this fall, and even after throwing those picks, especially the first one was just heinous. And then the third one was not at all his fault. It was a drop by KK Smith. And the second one was Tay Johnson showing he's a freak athlete. But we've seen him bounce back and have some great throws even on that day. We've seen Kenny Minchey just have a quiet confidence about him. And we do know his teammates love him. He was part of that group of a dozen or so guys that were out in Wyoming for July 4th. I think he's roommates with as many defensive guys as he is offensive guys. I think that tells you a little bit something about a guy when he has that sort of vibe with his entire teammates. And we know he's carried with him the belief that he'll win this job.
You
Now,
know, Tim, at first, okay, well, why is CJ Carr over there warming up on the field separately while the rest of the team is in flex? Okay, and then you hear the explanation. Okay, then you hear something about Kenny Minchey and where his standing is, and you start adding some things up. I mean,
Yeah, but I
CJ,
mean,
I'm not saying that
we
it
heard
is
only
that.
good things about CJ Carr hosting
I,
picnics and hosting people at his
Yeah.
I
house, and
understand.
like
I understand,
that's
but have you ever seen a guy warm up on his own away from the rest of the team? I'm not saying that's a factor. I'm just saying when you start to hear this, you think about a bunch of different things, and that one popped into my mind. Have you ever seen? Have you ever, in my 44 years, I
No.
don't think I've seen a quarterback warm up on his own away from the rest of the team. I'm not saying that's a factor, and I didn't even. I don't even think I wrote it. We talked about it, but I didn't write it because I didn't want to make a big deal out of it. I'm just saying. I'm just saying. That's all.
I have a bit of a negative spin on this, unfortunately. I think they expected CJ Carr to take the job and he hasn't.
Yep.
I don't think Kenny Minchey's surging as much as this just hasn't happened yet. And Kenny Minchey's more consistent
That is
I think,
possible
yeah,
too.
than
I
CJ Carr.
think like with our conversations that we had with people and our visits with Marcus, I think they probably believed they would be positioned to name a starter by the end of this Sunday's work. Like that's just sort of unofficially, that's 10, 11 days into camp. That's kind of a number that I think we all heard. And now it might go till next Sunday, which is,
We talked about
um,
this, Bryce. Tim and I
Yeah, we
did.
did.
I
Yeah.
think it's going to next Sunday. And now I really think it's going to next
Yeah.
Sunday.
This week is 3 weeks before kickoff. You can probably afford if you, I mean, I'm sure they want, if this scenario is what how we're depicting it, you want to give Carr a chance to come on,
Right.
earn this because, okay, so you go with Kenny Minchey. I think if you start Carr, you just naturally go into that with a little bit longer leash. Now you start Minchey. I don't know. I mean, it's just everything going through my head is as many different levels of speculation as I can think of.
JB, what have you heard anything about when they're considering they have a drop dead date? Like, not to
I
announce it,
mean,
but to have an internal drop dead date. Like they don't have to tell us. I just mean
yeah,
like,
I
yeah,
mean, I mean, my understanding was the drop dead date was the 17th because then that's when they officially transition out of camp and it's
Yeah.
all game prep from that point forward. So that was that was my understanding of when they really, really want no later than to have it done at that point in time. So the 17th is the end of camp and everything after that is about turning towards the season. They start game prep. Of course, classes start the next weekend, so there's some off time baked into that for move in weekend and all of that stuff. But the 17th is the end of camp, so I don't know if Peter anybody has heard it any differently, but that's exactly what I heard. And one more positive note, real quick, is I was told very adamantly this week that Jalen Stroman is surging in the back end too. So I think you asked a great question to Ash about rotating safeties, and I think they've got guys that are earning more and more trust. But Stroman it was told to me this week he's really making his move and really starting to show a guy that's played a heck of a lot of football.
Yeah, I mean, when they practiced in the stadium, Strowman was with the ones. Um, and that's
We,
on Thursday. He was a guy I was like,
it,
man, I really thought I was going to see more of Jalen Strowman, and I didn't.
I thought I saw him with the ones, at least for a flash on Thursday. I was watching D line
Yeah,
mostly, but that's great news. That's great news because that's a big time hitter with experience. Look, the more the merrier, man.
Before we go to segment two, there is going to be an August 9th announcement, mostly between Notre Dame and Notre Dame and Oklahoma for four-star Cardinal Mooney defensive tackle Elijah Golden, be the second DT in Notre Dame's class. Notable fourth player from the state of Florida, Tim Priester, and you've done a lot of reviews, but this
Yeah,
one getting pushed back. Yeah, I guess Oklahoma. I mean, Alabama's involved as well, of course, but I think Oklahoma is the one that would be the worry for
great,
Notre Dame.
great frame, great body, the kind of body that you want in your program. Very high upside, not very much knee bend, and has to learn how to really play the game on the inside. Uh, Plays way too upright most of the time. But again, he's a take 10 out of 10 because if you get the best out of him, if you coach him up, and that's what these guys do, they coach him up, you got a chance to have a real special football player there.
And we have a lot of personnel related questions coming up, but very important involved with them is also a very fun look back at the first freshman mentioned by Marcus Freeman and Brian Kelly in every training camp. We'll be back with segment two, burning up the boards.
Segment two, it's burning up the boards. We start with a question from Don Moody 11. What's the one position group that will determine whether Notre Dame is a true title contender or not? And T.O., what do we add to that?
No QB, no QB answer here. Come on, we just talked about the cute quarterbacks. So any other position group, I think, is good.
D,
Go ahead,
D
JB.
tackle. It's D tackle.
Okay, okay.
I I really liked what I saw during spring practice. I'm not sure if I'm as high on that group now as I was in April. But that's the position where I'm just like, if you're not stout up the middle, in some ways, like your great pass rush and your elite corners and your awesome safeties and your super talented linebackers, like that starts, it just takes away from all those other positions.
I don't at all disagree. I think that's a very good answer, a very telling answer, especially in today's game. I would contend that lurking not very far at all behind that would be the combination of punter and place kicker. I just think with the schedule, some of the road games opening at Miami, having A&M here, we saw Mitch Jeter have to win a game late in the playoff run. We saw him have to ice the Texas A&M game. I think you have to know you have top tier punting and place kicking, and there's reason to believe in both. And there's both Noah Burnett, the place kicker, and James Rendell, the punter, and there's reason to doubt in both. And I don't know if Pete's going to wear the shirt that he sent me that he suggested as a community purchase, but there is a golf shirt out there that was applicable to a practice we have witnessed. So I will leave it at that. But I'm dead serious. Like on a 16 game season, especially when you get past 12 games, a specialist can end your season in a hurry, or he can extend your season. And we saw Mitch Jeter do exactly that in the Orange Bowl. So yeah, the defensive tackle is huge. I think we all have pretty strong belief in the offensive line, even as you wait on Jagasaw to return. But defensive tackle you really need. But I'm a firm believer you got to have some really good work from your punter and your place kicker.
Defensive tackle, I think we're going to agree, Tim. Great point about the kicking and punting. I heard there was some interesting punting, the practice I missed, actually. I don't even know where I would go after this because I believe, and it's title contender, not playoff contender. It's a very
Right.
well worded question. I just really don't see down. I mean, outside of catastrophic injuries, I don't see other positions dragging them down too much from title contention. I guess if the receivers are only marginally better than last year, they're not winning a national title. You got to be a little bit more playmaker than they were last year because Riley Leonard erased a lot of stuff on 4th and 2 and 3rd and 3 and in that situation. But yeah, DT and more close games, so that can derail things too. More close games this year.
Yeah, I'm pretty confident with the receiving core, and then you throw Eli Raridon in there when injuries occur, things change. But I mean, I've got to agree. I don't. I think Marcus Freeman talking about 6 deep, 5 or 6 deep at defensive tackle. It doesn't feel that way right now, especially when I mean I know Heinisch is productive. Heinisch was talking the other day about my brother was a little bit stockier, and Donovan's game is more about quickness. But man, I don't, we don't know about Armel Mukum. Sevillano may have to play. I mean, I don't want to go 180-degree change on this because I still think
Well, it's
that
just your
Jason.
concern. It's your biggest
Well,
concern,
yeah,
though,
no,
right?
no
Yeah.
doubt, no
Yeah.
doubt. I mean, I have confidence Jason Onya is going to get better, but we've never seen him actually be a good defensive tackle. Elijah Hughes, we've never seen him be a good defensive tackle. I think a healthy Gabe Rubio is absolutely essential because of his size, and I have a lot of confidence in what Jared Dawson can do. But again, he's not very big. So I feel like all of a sudden we're doing a about face on the defensive tackles, but ironically, all four of us are doing it at the
Yeah,
same time. So,
it's fair. It's title
um,
contention. It's not, are they going to be good? It's title contention. There's,
Yeah.
yeah,
you need good defensive tackles to
no,
contend for a title.
some people are really going to have to step up if you talk about title contention, interior defensive line.
And I'd like to shout out to Don Moody, if that is indeed my old neighbor on Chelsea Court, that Clint Didier was his favorite tight end growing up. So not sure it's the same Don Moody, though. I didn't check.
And he had a lot of guys to choose from, and he picked Clint Didier.
Yeah, how's this guy? He's a Washington football whatever fan. Go
Okay.
Irish Bandit would like to ask. Aside from Eli Raridon looking great in a football jersey, how can we be sure that he'll be the gritty bully type of player Notre Dame needs at tight end? Last year, he seemed too willing to fall down or go out of bounds anytime he got the ball.
I don't know about falling down and going out of bounds, but this was a question, that I had in the spring. Pete, I know you're a big proponent of Eli Raridon, and I am too. I mean, I think he's capable. He certainly looks the part, as we say all the time, but let's see it.
Yeah, I mean, it's fair. Let's see it. I asked around at the end of spring practice because we were out there for what? We had the Jersey scrimmage and maybe one other one. I thought Raridan looked phenomenal in both of them, but that leaves what, 13 other practices? So I asked somebody like, well, what are the other 13 practices look? And he's like, a lot like the two that you saw. So, if you're that level of consistency, that would lead me to believe it's going to happen in the fall for him. I mean, he looks like $1 million. It's like you watch him running around from a distance as a tight end built that way, wearing number 9, and you're like, is that? And I'm like, okay, it's not. But I think he's a chance to be really, really good. I think he's going to be a difference maker for Notre Dame this season in some big moments.
Completely agree with you, Pete. I would side note, even though there's nothing about him here in the question, once again, have heard over the last week, and we heard it in May, like James Flanagan's going to come in and help us. That was what Notre Dame was saying the past week. Has been like James Flanagan is a freak. Like they really love him. His arms, I think, are even longer than what they had anticipated. His physicality is there. Um, and now with the Bauman injury, that guy's going to play a lot of football for Notre Dame sooner rather than later, and they're really encouraged by that. Eli Raridon, I think, is building off of health. He was a much different player the back half of last season than he was the first half of last season
Yes.
because he trusted his health, and now he can build off what he did in the back half of the season. He had that great touchdown catch against USC. He stayed healthy. He stayed healthy through spring, and knock on wood here, he stayed healthy through camp. And I think those are all key things because he has never stayed healthy for an extended amount of time. And so I think because he stayed healthy, because he knows this is it, there's urgency in him. He's embraced being more physical. He's still refining his routes a little bit, but he's just a freak athlete. So I think it's all of those things, but I do think the sustained health over a period of time, the confidence of what he did, and the urgency and knowing this is his last run, lay it all out there. I feel like even in limited practice exposure, I feel I've seen a difference in Eli Raridon, and they're encouraged by Ty Washington's evolution over the first 5 or 6 practices.
I think I'm with you guys. He's going to have a really good year, but in deference to the question, really quickly, he didn't have a lot of opportunities, but he's really, really low yards after the catch. He had a catch and run against Purdue. It was Purdue. I don't know how many guys they had on the field to defend him at the time, but after his other catches, his yards after the catch were 1, 5, 3, 2, 2, and 8 for
Wow.
football games. He just doesn't get many yards off the catch.
Yeah.
That can change when you're healthy and confident. And by the way, you got to get more balls than 10 or whatever he got last year,
Yeah.
9 or 10, 11 balls last year.
And we haven't, the loss of Cooper Flanagan really, really hurts his team. And so the positive news on James Flanagan, it comes at the right time, especially with Bauman going out now. I was saying, could Bauman maybe contribute because I thought he looked so good. So they're in a bit of a bind there. Man, this podcast is going to go down as a real downer, talking about D linemen and tight ends and quarterback situation and
hey, they're
backup
asking
running
about
back.
title shots, man. We can't just
I
talk
hear
about how
ya.
good everybody is.
I'm
Gee.
just,
All right.
after 44 years, I'm conditioned to know the reaction to our commentary, and I know what it's going to be from this one. And I get it. I mean, we haven't
After
been
4 decades,
I
you
don't
should know
we
there's really other good teams out there too that might get in the way of a title shot. There's no.
No, I'm not questioning that. And the schedule's more difficult. I got to give a talk tonight. I find myself, I think it's going to be much more negative than I anticipated. Now, this is still a team that's really, really good in a lot of areas, but there's a reality of situations, and nobody's great at every position. And then there's attrition, and then that takes a toll on a team.
Next question from Need a Turnover. One of the unsung heroes of last year's playoff run was junior Tui Halamaka. Despite a brief mention on instant analysis yesterday, I've heard very little about him. What are your realistic expectations for him this year? Or do you think he has reached his ceiling?
JB, start us off.
No, I think we have mentioned him certainly in the written practice reports because I've noted a couple of different times that whether I've helped contribute to defense or someone else has, he's been part of the early rotation, or in fact, he's been part of the first unit on the defensive line in some drills. Now, those are just drills; they don't mean anything. But I think Tim O'Malley correctly labeled him as arguably the unsung hero MVP of Notre Dame's 2024 playoff run. And I think he's healthy. His body looks a little bit better. He looks a little bit faster. And I think he's going to be a consistent contributor for this team. He does not have the ceiling of Kingston Viliamu-Asa. He doesn't have the ultimate ceiling of a Madden Faremo. I think they really like what KVA brings off the edge, and that's why we've seen them toying with that a little bit more. And then you still have, Burnham and Snead and those other guys in the mix there that can do some things for you off the edge. But I think Junior Tui Alamaka will be a very valuable contributor to this team over the course of the season.
Yeah, I think 3rd and 11, he can give you something. In an ideal world, if it's 1st and 10 or 2nd and 5 or 3rd and 1, like he's not your guy, and that's fine. You've recruited and developed to the point that he doesn't need to be. But he's somebody you would want on your roster 10 out of 10 times. So it was weird watching. I think there was some reps the other day where like Burnham and Tui Halamaka were running with the ones, and I'm like, ideal world, like that's not a playoff defensive end, but like, man, if those are your 3rd, 4th defensive ends, like that's great. So, I mean, Notre Dame's fortunate to have those guys.
I think it's I think it's a really good question by Need a Turnover. And I mean, I wholeheartedly agree. He's underrated. I think largely because he's understated as a personality. Even yesterday, I mean, you got guys coming in and say the first question was because they're playing the Penn State game on a loop in the IAC, and he was asked about it, and he's just like, I don't pay too much attention about it. It was last year. He's very understated. But when I'm watching defensive line drills yesterday, and it's Tui Alamaka's turn to take a rep, he does the rep, and invariably it's a complimentary comment from either Coach Condon, the assistant to the assistant, or Al Washington. I mean, I just think that, and we've said many times how Al Golden felt about him last year. He's a very sound football player, knows what he's doing, knows where to be, knows how to play team defense. He is very underrated. He's not necessarily a, big play guy that's going to get you 8 sacks this year, but he's a glue guy. And Pete, like you said, 10 out of 10 times you want Junior Tuihalamaka on your football team.
Next question from Chuck Freebie Sports. A 2025 opposing team coach or player you'd like to hear mic'd up in a practice. I'll go ahead and say maybe in a game too. I figured this is the right panel for this question.
Yeah, Pete, start us off on this one.
I mean, there's an obvious answer, and it's so obvious that it's like quarterback for the title contender. So we're just going to skip over Pat Narduzzi. I think Fran Brown would be really interesting.
Oh, you took mine.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's got, he sticks his chest out there. I think he did a great job last year. I mean, I realize they're going to probably come back to earth pretty hardcore this year, but still, he did nice work. So it would be fun to hear from him. I know he's a support staff guy, but if you'd mic up, I don't know if miking up Chad Bowden for the USC game would be good, but just some kind of way to figure out what's going through his head, that would be fun too.
You had thought bubbles the entire time. JB.
I like this question. Good question, Chuck Freebie. It's like you know what you're doing or something. I'm glad that Pete said Fran Brown because it's going to let me have even more answers.
Yes.
And so I think Sam Pittman would be hilarious to have mic'd up on game day at Arkansas, just because of I've known Sam for 14 or 15 years, know how he talks, know how candid he is. I've seen some of the locker room videos. He personally paid for a jukebox to be placed in the Arkansas locker room, and they play the jukebox after every win, and they love it and go wild when he says, "Play the damn jukebox." So I can only imagine the colloquialisms we would get over the course of a day. Southern Cal for me would be Lincoln Riley, because that's coming right after they play at Illinois, and it could be a juncture point in the season for the Trojans, and so that's why I would want Lincoln Riley. And then I'm glad he also already said Narduzzi, because I think Bill O'Brien would be pretty entertaining as well.
Definitely had Narduzzi on the top of the list. Definitely had Sam Pittman. I don't know him anywhere close to the way you, JB, but offensive line coaches that become head coaches, I generally want that person to be mic'd up. Definitely had Lincoln Riley. The one assistant that I wrote down was Corey Heatherman, who's the defensive coordinator at Miami this year, mainly because I would like to hear, his commentary and his thoughts on how to attack Notre Dame's offense in game one. So I'd have a better clue of what strengths and weaknesses Notre Dame has on the offensive side of the ball.
So you guys,
quick,
go ahead.
If I could cheat, because it's too good of a question, there are too many answers. I'd throw in Carson Beck. Because he's going to be facing Notre Dame after he didn't have to for Georgia last year, and it's his first live action in 10 months or whatever it is, and that's a hell of a way to reintroduce yourself to college football.
I'm going to cheat since we covered the entire present. In the past, I would want to hear Chuck Martin talking last week, because it would just be entertaining the entire time.
That's why I did it in bed with Miami last year. I got to hear Chuck Martin.
I would like to hear him speaking the entire game, practice, post game, all that stuff. And then I think to conclude the season, it'd be fun to listen to Steve Sarkisian against Notre Dame.
Just as long as we didn't have.
You guys get how that one worked? Yeah, that works.
I like that. I almost went hypothetical for my very first answer and said, well, I'm projecting into existence a Penn State Notre Dame rematch, and I want James Franklin's mic'd up for Dan.
You would like that more than a LSU Notre Dame?
Yeah. That would be a thing to have mic'd up right there. Yeah. I might want Marcus mic'd up if Notre Dame was playing LSU instead of the other way around. That might be the way to hear it.
I want to hear Chuck Martin, just as long as I don't have to transcribe what he says.
As long as you're not transcribing. That's
very difficult transcribe. All right, we got a couple questions paired together here. VA Doc 88 says down the stretch of 2024 and throughout the college football playoff, Aeneas Williams was Notre Dame's third down running back. Do you anticipate that will change in 2025? And then from Blue Gray, October Sky, is the two-back alignment real? Will Notre Dame use it every game or save it for key moments? Seems like we had success with it against Ohio State in 2023, albeit with a different offensive coordinator. In the running back room, if the running back room is indeed the best in the country, it seems a little foolish not to have it, the two-back, be a staple of the offense.
Pete, I want you to throw a lead balloon on your old two-back stats from the past.
Yeah, this is so we have access to this kind of stuff through the Athletic, and I asked like, all right, last 3 years, the percentage of snaps Notre Dame ran in two back. 2022, 4.8%. 2023, 2.6%. And 2024, the year where Mike Denbrock was the offensive coordinator, 1.3% of snaps were two back. So I think to say it's going to be a staple is a stretch, as much as I think we all would like to see it be a staple.
Right. There's different things.
Yeah, it's really rare. I think last further context, only 16 teams ran 21 personnel on more than 5% of their snaps last year. Of those 16 teams, a bunch of them were military academies. So that eats up a lot of that too.
Other part of that question, yes. I think Aeneas Williams will be Notre Dame's third down back. I anticipate that will remain the same.
Yeah, I don't know if this question was concocted before the Keaton Young news or not, but I mean,
I don't think it would have mattered if
yeah.
Keaton Young was there with Aeneas. Yeah.
Well,
I think,
yeah.
Go ahead, John.
I would just say in 24, though, Aeneas captured that after Jabron Payne blew out his knee and missed the season. And that cracked the door open for him. So we don't know if Jabron Payne can wedge himself into that with Kedron Young now out of the equation. Can Jake Tefelsky be a big back guy that they utilized in pass block or for an extra blocker down around the goal line? I don't know. The two back set, what I've gleaned from very little bit of camp is that I think Denbrock likes the ability and feels better about having that set this year, maybe a little bit more so than last year, because last year you had such a running centric quarterback in Riley Leonard. Whereas I do think the two back could be a little bit more effective when you have a potentially strong quarterback in the throw game.
Pete, are those percentages are like regardless of the alignment of the backs?
Yeah, it's two backs.
Okay. And I asked that because, I mean, Jeremiah Love is one of two backs on the field, changes the dynamic of it. That's a guy that, they will accentuate a little bit more throwing the football too. I think I would bet that Jaywan Sider wants two back more than Mike Denbrock does.
Yeah, he just doesn't get to call it.
I mean,
I mean, it's an interesting conversation because I feel like every year we're like, hey, who are Notre Dame's best five? You're starting five among receivers, tight ends, backs. Like, sometimes it's 11 personnel. Many years where it was 12 personnel. This year it's 21.
You've been trying to build up your receiving core, and I think that their front four receivers have a chance to be pretty good. You're taking one off the field, but again, that's why I mentioned Jeremiah Love, because that's a very different dynamic. You put him on the field with Jadarian Price or Aeneas Williams or whatever. You feel good about him breaking a big play the way you would with another wideout.
Pete, I'm sorry. Did you mention how much Penn State played two back last year?
I didn't, but they weren't in that 16 teams that ran at 5% or more, and obviously they had two really good backs. So.
From T. Branson, will the red zone offense be better or worse? Less quarterback runs, but better passing is his plan. Which way do you see this going?
All right,
actually, hold up. I was wrong. Penn State was 11th last year. They did it 6.4% of the time, two backs. So Sider is apt to do this a lot more. And Texas it's like Texas and Penn State were the two really good teams that did it.
Thank you.
Okay, let's talk red zone offense. Notre Dame was number 19 in the country last year in touchdown percentage. I don't measure that was a Charlie Weiss thing, and I wholeheartedly agree. You don't measure by score, how many times you score, because then if you settle for field goals. So it's touchdown percentage. Notre Dame was 19th. check this out. These 9 Notre Dame opponents. Navy was first, Boise was 12th, Pittsburgh was 15th, Miami was 17th, USC was 23rd, Arkansas was 26th, Texas A&M was 29th, Syracuse was 32nd, and Boston College was 43rd. Now, some of those are going to change. I agree with you, Pete. Fran Brown did a great job at Syracuse last year, but he lost a ton, and their schedule is absurd. So there's no way they can win 10 games again. But I think Notre Dame's red zone offense falls back because you don't have Riley Leonard.
I would agree with that. I mean, Notre
Oh,
Dame's
yeah.
red zone, it's been really good for the last 4 years. Shockingly, it was awful in 2020, which doesn't
Doesn't
make
make
any
any sense.
They were 84th in touchdown percentage, but
They couldn't throw it. They couldn't throw it to anybody. That was Michael Mayer and Skoranek and Jalen
yeah, but
McKinley,
it's like
so.
you had Ian Book, who was just like so crafty with that kind of stuff. Yeah, I think it will take a step back this year because they don't have the we're going to do this and you can't stop it. Um, I think they'll have a lot of variety in how they run it. But I don't know if Kenny Minchie wins the job. Maybe I would change my opinion on it. But it just you're not going to be better than Riley Leonard at picking up 3rd and 3 from the 3-yard line.
No, I would counter that. I should have looked this up, so I apologize for having not done so. What did Denbrock's offense do red zone wise from year 1 to year 2 at LSU? Was it improved year 2? I would want to know that. I also would point out that I think we all expect Notre Dame's offensive line overall to be better this year than it was last year, which can certainly bear fruit in the red zone. And also, I think there will be a little bit more faith in the notion that it doesn't have to be Riley Leonard making a hero play or running through 4 defenders to make things happen in the red zone. So if there's a drop off, I would not expect it to be substantial, and I think everyone, Notre Dame included, would be very disappointed if it was a significant drop off.
That's a good point, JB. And I'm not saying significant, but I think, number 19 in the country, I'd say probably not, because Leonard was how many rushing touchdowns he have?
17?
17.
Broke the record. It's
Yeah.
pretty easily. I guess he played more games, I suppose, too, but they're
What do you
important
think,
games, so
Tim?
it counts when you break the record. Yeah, I would guess I still guess they'll be top 25, top 30, but here's the real difference, I think. These are what they were last year in another offensive category. 117th, 119th, and 79th. Touchdowns scored from 50, 40, and 30 yards out. You get a lot more of these this year when you throw the ball down the field, and then your red zone isn't quite as important if you can
Good
score
point.
2 touchdowns from 50 yards out last year. 2?
With Jeremiah Love.
Come on. So you need more of the 50s and more 40s. You need to hit that. What do they call it? They make up a new name for it every time they cross 50-yard line. What's that zone called now? Brian Kelly had a different name for it than Marcus Freeman does. When you're hitting midfield, where
Money
Marcus is
zone? Don't they call it the money zone or
money
something?
zone, maybe. Yeah, see, that also sounds
I think
made
it's
up.
a
It
David
feels like,
Shaw punt zone.
yeah. Yes, the punt zone for David Shaw. Well, when Marcus goes for it on 4th, there's touchdowns this year, I think. It's not always going to be Riley Leonard getting a yard. Remember, Tim, I was calling for that all last playoff?
Yeah. No, that's fair.
If
That's
I
fair.
could, I did do the research. I found out it didn't take nearly as long as I thought. LSU was 49th in the red zone in 2022 and 20th in 2023. So now they had a pretty sensational guy named Jaden Daniels at the time, but they did improve almost 30 points, which Notre Dame statistically cannot do this year. So
Although if you're looking at touchdown percentage, LSU was 14th in 2022, and then they were 9th in 2023. So in terms of like getting over the goal line when they hit the red zone, Denbrock was both good in both years.
Our next question is from Nate Cundiff 513. Love listening to the podcast. Do you guys envision a scenario where the 2 quarterbacks are used similarly to Everett Golson and Tommy Reese in 2012?
I'll go first because I'll be quick. I do not. I think you needed Tommy Reese to balance out Everett Golson, and you don't need that anymore. Mentally speaking, you needed Tommy Reese's ability to process what he was seeing in front of him. It was Golson's first year. Reese was a returning starter of 15 games, like 16 games at that point, 17. So I just don't think it's in the cards this year.
Yeah, I think that the disparity between those two quarterbacks was so vast in terms of experience and ability. Like, I don't feel that way about Minchie and Carr. But I see a scenario where we could get the dreaded, we're looking for a spark quarterback change, where like the offense labors a little bit and they're like, okay, we're going to try the other guy. So that doesn't mean, I don't know if that's they start Minchie and go to Carr, or start Carr, go to Minchie. Like, but I could see them trying both. And I know Freeman has said like you just can't rotate a quarterbacks like every other position. But I think, from the challenge everything school of thought, he's shown a willingness to try new stuff and is not afraid to do it. And this would kind of fall in that category potentially.
Yeah, that was going to be my point. I don't get the sense that anybody on this offensive staff wants to play two quarterbacks, but Marcus Freeman has fully ingrained the team glory mantra into this program to where it's a very part of the culture, and so they ultimately will do anything they have to do to help the team be in the best position to win games.
Yeah, I don't see it happening. I mean, just no. My answer is no. I don't see that happening. Question from Manentai, true or false? This team has decidedly lower floor than last year. Question. It's a question. Is it a decidedly lower floor than last year? Last year, Notre Dame had a successful, if not elite quarterback, established leadership at every level of the defense, whereas this year, the quarterback is an unknown, and the expectation that injured players will come back healthy and underclassmen will take on the mantle of leadership are all factors that could lead to the program not achieving its lofty goals.
You know, Manentai always asks some good questions. That's a frequent contributor. Monty Kiffin taught me a long time that if you see a little, you see a lot, but if you see a lot, you don't see anything. In other words, the devil is in the details, and I believe that the details are in this program and what Marcus Freeman has done to establish the culture and to elevate the floor. So I think the floor, I wouldn't call it a decidedly lower floor than a year ago because the talent is better 1 through 95 or 105 or whatever you want to call it on this year's roster than it was last year because of Marcus Freeman's work and the entire staff and the way they've rebuilt, retooled, and upgraded being key, the roster. And you still have a lot of talented guys, and you still have a lot of guys on both sides of the ball that have played a lot of football. You still have, even if they're young offensive linemen, you got Emil Wagner, who almost played 2 seasons worth of snaps last year. You've got Ashton Craig returning, who nailed down the starting job late in 23 and has still played significant games despite injury. And you've got a guy like Billy Schrouth who battled through so much and showed a lot last year and has nailed down that guard spot and played a lot of football. And you can make a lot of the same things on the other side of the ball. The belief that this staff has in Kingston and Drake Bowen and bringing in Strowman, who's played a tremendous amount of ball, and Devontae Smith, who's played in an SEC championship game and played against Georgia and Texas and LSU and at Wisconsin and all these things. So I get the nature of the point, but I'm going to lean into Monty Kiffin here and say that I'm seeing a lot and seeing a little.
I get the question because on the surface, not having a quarterback that's proven and losing all your leaders from last year lowers the floor, but they have more and they have a harder schedule.
Right.
They have more good players. I don't think it's vastly lower anywhere, but to the point of the question, I'll leave it with this. We said at this point last year, I think I did. I don't know if you guys agreed. If they beat A&M, they're going undefeated. Well, they almost did just that because it was pretty easy to look at that and be like, nobody else handling this team the rest of the way. I'm not saying if they beat Miami, they're going undefeated this year. So I guess you drop the floor. The floor drops a game. Last year, if he lost 2 games, you messed up in a big way if you were Notre Dame's coaching staff. That's not true this year. So it does drop a game. The floor drops a game for sure on preseason.
Oh,
But it's not decidedly. So
Yeah,
lower floor.
not decidedly. That's not decidedly.
Lower floor, uncertain quarterback, new defensive coordinator, harder schedule. That's the lower floor.
Yeah, it is. And, I mean, it concerns me. The expectations are a little bit outrageous. Like the expectation among Notre Dame fans is that they shouldn't lose. And It's just not that easy. I think it's a good question. I think that they lost a ton of leadership. Jack Kaiser, one of the great leaders in Notre Dame football modern era. Xavier Watts, good God. I mean, he was more productive than Kyle Hamilton. Not saying he's better, but as a college football player, his last 2 years, he was more productive. Riley Leonard, the leadership that he provided. Is either one of these quarterbacks going to be able to provide the leadership that Riley Leonard did over the course of the season? That's hard to say, but great talent, really good depth. I think they're capable of winning the first two games. I don't know whether I'm going to predict that or not right now. That doesn't really matter, but it's hard. Everything that Pete just said, those are all true, and that lowers the floor for this team.
Yeah, I don't think expectations are overly unrealistic or overly burdensome. You have a coach with an earned, very lucrative long-term contract extension. You have two of the highest paid coordinators anywhere in football. You have one of the highest paid strength coaches anywhere in football. You have multiple assistant coaches on 3-year deals making seven figures, and you have invested heavily in your roster. So I just think yeah, it's difficult. And the first two games to where we said last year, if they win at Texas A&M, they're going undefeated. I've said on this podcast previously, I think if Notre Dame starts 2-0, it will finish the season 12-0. And unlike this year, if it finishes the season 12-0, it has a great shot to be one of the top four and then therefore get a bye. And the only downside of that would be not getting to see another fabulous college football playoff atmosphere inside Notre Dame Stadium.
Final
Right.
question, and we're going to have a follow-up to this one as well. Siggy 12, O'Malley, can you share your research on the first freshman mentioned by the staff? I did an article on this a while ago and have kept the research going, and how you think the player mentioned this year can contribute. And then Pete Sampson actually did exhaustive research via was it via your Twitter feed?
I had to email Elon Musk to get this information.
And Pete got all the guys that stood out to him during training camps. So we'll start with this one. I want listeners and you to listen to Brian Kelly, the most prescient coach in the world, on his opening commentary of who stood out his first game. Are you ready? Freshman only. Okay. 2010, Bennett Jackson, Danny Spond, and Austin Collinsworth. Captain, starter, captain in the future. 2011, Stephon Tuitt and Matthias Farley. 2012, Kavari Russell, but he did add they have no freshman All-Americans on that team. He made that quote, and Kavari was a freshman All-American. 2013, Corey Robinson, followed by the obvious, Jalen Smith. Wasn't too hard for him to do that. And Cole Luke. 2014, go off the rails here one time, Mr. Kelly. Jerron Jones, good job. Pete Makwa and Daniel Cage. So he had a little bit of an issue there, and Makwa threw up the next time we saw him on the field. 2015, Sean Crawford with the quote, I don't care if he's 5'5", he's going to help us. 2016 is insane. Julian Aquara, Dalen Hayes, and Tommy Kramer. 2017, Myron Tungavailoa Amosa and Kurt Heinisch.
Wow.
2018, Bo Bauer. 2019, not fair, Kyle Hamilton. 2020, Michael Mayer and Chris Tyree. And 2021, Lorenzo Styles, but he needs time. That's insane. Marcus Freeman, 2022, only freshman he mentioned by name the entire August was Tobias. Noted he needed some time. 2023, he ruined the best commentary he could have possibly had by saying, I think Rico and JG are going to do a lot of great things for us this year, but you can't count out Braylon James yet. So that one probably went a little off the rails. And then last year, he'd never mentioned a freshman by name, but he said the freshman cornerbacks, which is pretty darn impressive. And he has not mentioned a freshman this year. Doesn't count because he has not seen camp when you guys talked to Marcus Freeman that first time. Brian Kelly, machine.
When do we talk to him again?
Next Sunday when they're going to know their quarterback and not tell us.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll be asking who won the starting quarterback job, not which freshmen have stood out.
Pete Sampson?
Yeah, this was, I do sort of players that stood out every year on the first practice. Sometimes people like the answer, sometimes people don't. Last year was Wagner, Schuler, Rundell, Jeter, Gilbert, KVA, Morrison, Jaden Thomas, and Christian Gray. 2023, Hartman, Morrison, Ford, You're My Love, Cam Hart, Trouth, Mickey, and Matt Salerno. 22,
I
Cross
remember.
Estime, Bracy, Mayer, Pine. People didn't like that one. Brown, Merriweather was a miss. And Kaiser was a hit. 21, Austin, Bertrand, Logan Diggs, Josh Lugg, Braden Lenzy. 20, there wasn't one. 2019, Hamilton, obviously, but I also had Owusu Koromoa, Fink, Book, Lamb, and Lenzy. 17, Dante Vaughn, Cam Smith, Tony Jones, Alize Mack, Brandon Wimbush, Sean Crawford, Niles Morgan, Jafar Armstrong. That was a huge whiff.
Good stuff.
Sometimes you know what you're seeing. Sometimes they just had a really good day.
Priester, anything to say on Brian Kelly's ability to identify freshmen in the first practice when he's asked about it? It's pretty good, huh?
Um, no, no. I mean, that's why he's a very good coach. I know, not maybe not a great coach, maybe not one worthy of a statue on the
No, definitely not.
campus,
Definitely not. Yeah. We
but
established that.
I thank you, Brian Kelly, for handing Marcus Freeman a good program, and then Marcus Freeman has now taken it to another level.
I did not see Pete Makwa making this podcast, but Brian Kelly never should have mentioned Pete Makwa the day before he had to throw up on the
No, he
football field.
shouldn't have.
So we'll be watching a little bit of football this weekend, not as much as usual. But until then, for Pete Sampson, The Athletic, and Tim Priester of Irish Illustrated, I'm Tim O'Malley. Thank you for watching Irish Illustrated Insider.